No judgment here. No judgment here.
Looks like we've got a net, so I'll just sit quiet.
Well, you make number 7, so if Chris doesn't come on, then you're good. Annette will have you sit in today because Dawn won't be here. Okay, whenever.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting for May 11th of 2020. To start our meeting, I'd just like to read a brief statement. I, Ryan Cowley, Chair of the Royse City Planning Commission, and in accordance with Utah Code Section 52-3-207, have determined that conducting a meeting in the Royse City Council chambers presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who would be present. The basis for this determination is due to the infectious nature and potentially dangerous health effect of contracting the COVID-19 virus. There is not sufficient space in the council chambers to provide appropriate, safe physical distancing for the safety of the individuals who would attend. Accordingly, the May 11th, 2021 meeting will be held electronically without an anchor location. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Commissioner Felt is going to lead us on that.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Felt. Item number 1 on our agenda tonight is declaration of conflicts. Are there any conflicts that any of the commissioners have?
No. No.
No.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 2, which is approval of the April 13th, 2021 Commission regular meeting minutes. Is there any discussion on those minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I'll rule that motion passes unanimously. Item 3 on our agenda is a public hearing considering a request to amend the following maps for the property located approximately 5445 South, 4300 West. And that includes a general plan, medium density, single family residential to very high density, multifamily residential, and a zoning map from RE20 real estate to R3 or R4 multifamily residential. Is the applicant on the meeting, Steve?
Steve, you're muted.
You're still muted, Steve.
Brought on the wrong person. Hold on. It's supposed to be Kevin Jones, not Brenda. And let's see, change the role. There we go. There he is. Okay, Kevin is now on. Kevin, you can unmute yourself, and I brought, I think it's Jason Adams that's with you as well.
Yep. You get me okay?
Can't see you, Kevin, but we can hear you, I think.
Bear with me. It's my first time. There we go.
We can see you now. Welcome.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
You bet. So if you just take a minute and kind of talk us through what you're wanting to do out there, and just let us know kind of what your thoughts are, and we'll go from there.
Okay. My wife and 2 kids and I, we've lived in this property for the last 10 years. We've been renting it from the Castings and have approached them about the opportunity to buy it, and in doing so to develop it as well. And they've given us consent, the agreement to go ahead and make that purchase, and the consent to pursue the rezoning application, which we're doing now. So like I said, we've been here for 10 years and things are changing around here. The commercial property to the south of us is going to get developed. That's going to happen. And we just feel that we'd like to try to do something with a piece of ground that would be a good transition between commercial and the residential that surrounds us. And that's why we're making a request to do to build townhomes. I'm not sure exactly what zoning that falls under, whether it's R3 or R4, but our desire is to build a little townhome project here on the property. Jason, do you have anything to say?
Yeah. The townhome project would be, like he says, a transition from the commercial to the surrounding residential. It's currently there. It also wouldn't be an individually townhome or owned townhome thing where we have 40 units all individually owned. They would actually be owned by one parent company that leases all of them out and takes care of all the management and the maintenance and all that, which typically in the other ones we've done, cities seem to like that better. So they can call us with any issues, one phone call instead of 40 phone calls. But yeah, we are proposing to change the zoning to the high, I guess, the more capacity with the zoning, with the townhomes. You guys just approved, I don't know when, but a while ago you guys approved the commercial ground straight south of our ground now. And I think a good buffer, a good transition into the current residential would be the townhomes. And we'd also like to get feedback from you guys on how you would like to see that laid out. We sent a little preliminary map to Steve. I'm not sure if you guys have access to that or not. If you do, and you don't like that layout, we're more than willing to work with you guys on how you guys would like to see that. That's all I have for now. I can answer any questions.
Yeah, so I have a question, then we'll open it up to the other commissioners. So really the difference between the two different zones that you're looking at is really just the uses. Do you guys have any intention of any commercial use like the beauty supplies or office space, anything like that? Or is it just strictly the townhomes?
It would just be strictly townhomes, no commercial at all on there.
All right, thank you. Any other commissioners have any questions? Okay, well, with that, we'll turn it over to Steve for just a minute. Steve, do you want to share your thoughts on the area there?
Sure. Hopefully everybody can see the screen. So as mentioned, Kevin had submitted an application to rezone the property, and with that also included a general plan amendment. They have to go kind of hand in hand, and therefore one can't go without the other. So the property in question, you get 4300 west and then 5500 south. The Holiday Oil will be here on the corner lot, and this one's just north of that. It's about 3.8 acres. Howard Slough does run through it. As mentioned many times during the rezone request of the property to the south, and any changes to that does require approval from the Army Corps of Engineers and or State Engineers Office. So those, when development actually starts to occur, that's when we'll get those involved. But again, this is just changing the zoning from the RE20, which is 20,000 square foot lots, to the R3 or R4, It's sounding more like the R3. They're not wanting that commercial aspect. Just to kind of give you an idea, here's the existing future land use map on the left and the existing zoning map on the right. The future land use map has this to be medium density residential, which is R16, R17, R18, and R110. Just let everybody know, an R16 means a parcel needs to be, or can be no smaller than 6,000 square feet. R17, 7,000, R18, 8,000, and R110 is 10,000. So an R3 zone does allow for multifamily and single family. A single family lot can be 6,000 square foot on a parcel. Multifamily is about 3,750 square feet per unit. That's not the size of the unit, that's how much land you have to have. Or 12 units per acre, which is about 3,650, I think what it adds up to be. Just kind of give you an idea, the property in question is in yellow, down 4,300 west, about 2,000 feet. There are 3 fourplexes. They're on the Hooper side of 43, down by Emma Russell Park. Their density, so kind of a look at it, both from a subdivision plat and an aerial. Their density is about 12 units per acre at 3,751 square feet per unit, where Roy's for an R3 or R4 is 3,750 per unit. So it wouldn't, yes, it is kind of 2,000 feet south, but it wouldn't be something that's brand new in the area. I think these are owner occupant, but as everybody knows, with the housing shortage that is around, that people are looking for different options for housing to be cheaper, to be able to afford, to be able to live, whether it be renting and or owning. Every city needs to provide those options, whether it be single family or multifamily, townhomes or apartments or what have you. So some questions that the commission will need to reflect upon for both the change in the general plan and the rezone. Does the change or not changing the zoning provide the best options for development of this property? How can this property be best developed as large lot, single family, or multifamily residential? And which zone best fits for Roy? Again, this is kind of on the outskirts of Roy, between Roy and Hooper, but it is still in Roy. So you need to take a look at those type of things. So staff would recommend approval. In this case, I think I put R4, yeah, but R3 is, again, has the same density allowances. The only difference, again, is a commercial component in the R4. So I would change my recommendation to R3, knowing that that's what the applicant had more in mind than anything. So any questions for me?
So Steve, going back to the map that you had up there first, one prior to that, right there. So the area that we're talking about, the area in red is kind of the holiday oil that we've had before us in the last couple of months. And then the area in yellow is the part in question with the red slashes. And that's the city boundary. I just want to make sure that's the city boundary. So that little piece is in Roy, but everything else on that side, on the west side of 4,300 is in Hooper. Is that correct?
Okay. Yep. So everything in white is Hooper. Everything in color is Roy, and then the blue line, kind of dotted line, it represents the boundary.
Hey, Steve, do you know where the nearest transit stop is to this property? No?
I don't. I'd probably say at least 3,500 west. I don't know if anything heads west on 56, 55 out that far. I just don't know.
Understand. Just when we start talking about higher densities and, accommodating, maybe younger families and to avoid traffic, when we consider that, it's always nice to know if there's transit options, you know, rather than
Right.
bringing a bunch of cars into a small lot, a small parcel, so.
Okay.
So the understanding is it's probably a little ways away.
Yeah, at least, well, 8 blocks in this case, about a mile.
Any other questions for Steve?
Yeah, Steve, did you happen to have the pictures that they were referring to as possible layouts?
I didn't receive them, so no.
Steve, is there any way that I can send that to you now? I emailed it to you, but apparently you didn't get that.
Yeah, if you want to send it,
Can I just text it to you?
you can text it, but I wouldn't be able to show it very well on the call.
So email it would be best.
Yeah, because then I can show it on the Zoom, my shared screen.
But what we're really talking about is apartments, rentals, right?
Sounds like townhomes that would be rentable, very similar to the orchards at 19th, I assume. They're townhome style, but rented. If I receive this here in a minute, then I'll.
The community, it's actually in West Haven on 21st Street. It's brand new. It would be similar to that, very similar to that. That one's obviously a larger scale than ours. That's got like 276 units. I think the one that we're looking at right now is anywhere from like 36 to 44 units. But it would be very similar, really nice finishes, kind of a quote unquote higher end townhome, not outrageous, but a nicer finish that can accommodate families and people that live by themselves.
Well, I haven't received it yet, so I don't know if Kevin, you sent that or not, but.
And I don't know if that's really completely relevant to the conversation tonight. I mean, we kind of get the idea that, you know, we're looking at, what is it, 3.83 acres, if I remember correctly there, and it's a density of up to 12 units per acre. So we'd be looking right in that 40 range. And that's really the decision, I think, before us, is just whether we allow that type of use, and then how it's laid out. Obviously, we can get some information and come back and address that with the site plan. But in my mind, it's kind of a separate discussion.
They would need to do a site plan anyway with us.
Right.
Right. Well, if there's no other questions for Steve, we do need to do a public comment on this. So we'd have to open up a public hearing. I'll entertain a motion on that.
Make a motion that we go into public hearing.
You have a motion to go into public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
All right, Commissioner Felt, you beat her to the punch. So with that, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll open this up for public comment. So Steve will bring them on board. And then if you come on, just as a reminder, please state your name and your address. And then just keep your comments as brief as possible. But if you've got, we definitely want to hear what you have to say. So we'll go ahead and we'll welcome the public comment.
I'll bring on Mr. Jeremy McReynolds. He was the first one. Jeremy, you should be on now, so.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Hello? Okay. All right, Jeremy McReynolds, live at 5494 South, 4425 West. Property is my backyard as I border Roy City and Hooper. I I had a question. I got some questions. So Steve, how long have you been zoning commissioner?
I've been the
Can you hear
city
me?
planner for 7 years.
7 years. Do you live in Roy?
I do not.
Okay.
Will please address the planning commission with your
So
question.
you're not personally able to see the traffic backup on 4,300, 5,600, 6,000, 4,800, 4,000 before work and after work. It's a parking lot. You don't actually see that person, do you?
So Jeremy, could you address those to the planning commission? We're the ones that'll be making that decision on this tonight.
Okay, well, same question. Do you guys see the parking lot on 5,600, 4,300? If 3,500 is backed up, everybody shoots down 4,300. It's a parking lot. Kevin knows this. If 5,600 is backed up, it's 6,000. It's 4,800. It's 4,000. So the thing okay, so do you guys see this? Are you aware of the problem right now that you're overpopulated?
Well, I think all of us do live in Roy. I live, fairly close to Kent. And so, yes, I do see the traffic on 5,600.
Okay. So you guys are familiar with the Roy City General Plan, is that correct?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
if you could kind of just state what your things are, and then we can address some of this at
I
the
got
end.
5 minutes.
That's probably
minutes.
the best way to do it.
Thank you, Ryan.
So have you guys ever looked up the Army Corps of Engineers permit 404? What I'm getting at is, in your general plan, are you guys aware that Howard Slough is identified as a sensitive land and is identified as a wetland?
I'm aware that the canal itself is, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So Steve has used his position to state in multiple meeting minutes that it is not, which has been an ongoing problem, which has led to multiple rezoning, which includes the Holiday Oil. Have you guys, zoning commission, have you guys ever created more wetlands?
What was
I know
that?
you've taken them away. Have you created more
More what?
wetlands?
Oh.
Sensitive lands as identified in your guys' general plan.
I believe that's up to the Army Corps of Engineers to designate wetlands, not the
If you're
city.
familiar with your zoning, or if you're familiar with your general plan, it states in there that planned are the construction of trails, maintenance benches, security lights, habitat restoration, which includes the creation of more wetlands, expansion of the slough's overflow capacity. I specifically identified with Howard Slough. So I'm asking again, have you guys ever created more wetlands pertaining to Howard Slough?
Ryan, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
I thought our process for our public hearing was that they ask the questions and we answer them at the end, because I'm a little lost on if we're supposed to respond or if we're waiting till the end. So could you just review that and so we're all on the same page?
Yeah, and
I'm sorry,
yes,
Jeremy. I'm just
thank
a little
you.
confused on what we're doing.
Yep.
Okay,
So typically the best way to do it is just go ahead and state everything that you would like us to address. And then at the end,
It
we
is
can
not
come
the best
back
way
and
to do it.
address it.
Because last time that we had this conversation, Steve Parkinson created perjury and he lied under oath in your meeting minutes stating that the wetlands and Howard Slough is not sensitive. It's not a wetland. And
I don't believe
again,
that Steve
you
has
stated
committed
at the end of
perjury, and I don't think this is the place to address that. If you feel that he committed
is the-
perjury, that's something that can be addressed in court. But the issue before
it
us
will
is
be.
rezoning this area.
Thank
Okay,
you,
so-
Ryan.
you got a sensitive wasteland. Steve has also said, are you guys familiar with the FEMA maps?
So go ahead and just tell
So
us
the
what you would like us to be
Your
aware
FEMA
of.
So Steve Parkinson has claimed that the FEMA maps identify Howard Slough as not a sensitive wetland, but it actually states in FEMA that it is not even noted in the FEMA maps. So what I'm getting at is it is a wetland, and it is the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. If you go to their website, the entire slough is a protected wetland, and it's called a freshwater emergent wetland. So the problem being is you guys have changed zoning. You guys have let Todd Grandstaff illegally demo buildings. And
Okay,
this
just
is
a second
part of
there,
that. This is just part of-
Mr. McReynolds.
this is just part of
So
that.
before us tonight, this public hearing is specifically about the rezone, which doesn't include anything about the wetlands. It's simply about the density of the property at play. So these other issues can be addressed in court or separate from this meeting, but what we have before us is truly just the rezone of this, which is really independent of whether it's wetlands or not.
So you guys, you guys cannot squarely support.
Sorry, it's freezing up and cutting out, at least on my end, so I'm unable to hear what you're trying
So
to
my
say
point
to us
is,
right now.
I have reached out to Mayor Reagan, and so I reached out on multiple occasions to your mayors, to your city council, stating that there has been illegal activity and there's been rezoning issues. And I highly encourage Roy City to table this at this moment until an investigation can be done. I will be turning over all of my information that goes back to all the rezoning that is around the wetlands on Howard Slough, and specifically Steve Parkinson, that has allowed this over the last 7 years.
Okay, so getting back
And
to
it's
what
all
I'm
in the meeting
saying is
minutes.
we need to hear what concerns you have with this specific rezone, which I did hear
So
the traffic concern. That's the one that's relevant to this conversation.
At 4,300 can't support it. It can't, like, the gas station should not be allowed. The Holiday Parkinson get the commercial rezoned. So that was contingency with Holiday Oil and Todd Grandstaff. So this whole thing in the last, since 2020, December of 2020, has been illegal activity. And you guys have a lot of issues, and you guys all sign off on the meeting minutes stating that, to your best knowledge, it is true. But the fact that Steve Parkinson has used the FEMA maps that don't address
Okay,
wetlands.
this is the last time I'm gonna tell you to please just address the issue at hand. These other things need to be addressed at a separate moment in time. This isn't the time or the place to address the Holiday Oil or even the wetlands. This is about the rezone of this specific property. So like I said, I've heard you talk about the traffic. That's definitely relevant to the topic at hand before us.
Can I take a minute to,
Yes,
the
please,
school, the
Commissioner
kids,
Falk.
the safety, but is
Commissioner Falk, go ahead. You had something you would like to say?
all I was going to say is, in my investigation into this issue before, and again, acknowledging that this isn't pertinent to the discussion beyond what limitations it might offer against any kind of a rezone, but the channel itself within its banks are protected and administered by the state. The property around it is private. So anything that's, any kind of improvements that are done that affect the channel itself, improvement wise, have to be done through the state, which Steve Parkinson has already stated. We're talking about the property that's adjacent to it that's private. That we can rezone that, or that can be rezoned without any kind of limitation, as far as I understand.
it's all protected by the United States Army Corps of Engineers.
The channel itself is.
No,
Just the
the whole
channel.
wetlands. Can you see this? Here's my concern.
Oh, yeah, but then I can take out his.
This
Okay,
is
so
for
I-
protecting wetlands.
But
So, Mr. McReynolds, the conversation, and this is a public hearing about the rezone. And like I said, the information that you're providing here is not relevant to that rezone. What health, safety, welfare concerns do you have relating to rezoning from single-family residences to townhomes on that property do you
Hello?
have?
Okay. Obviously, nobody wants townhomes in their backyard. I just did $100,000 of improvements in my backyard. I don't want townhomes in there. They can't support it in any type of traffic scenario. The schools are already at capacity. Like, I know the only reason that this is trying to pass is because it's the return on investment. This is why Todd Grandstaff backed out of the other residential. You have to have a lot of tenants in order to is to pipe the slough using the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. There's a lot of cost that have to go into that. And the fact that everybody is hidden from the fact this is a protected wetland. And over the last 4 years that I've been involved is very concerning to me. They have done nothing.
Okay, it seems to be that we're freezing up, but I think you've filled your allotted time. So thank you, Mr. McReynolds. Is it freezing up for everybody else, or is that just on my end? Okay.
It's freezing up.
Yep. I think we've given him plenty of opportunity and appreciate the comments, Mr. McReynolds. Steve, will you go ahead and bring on the next person who would like to speak?
Sure. The next one that requested was Stephanie, and I'm going to probably murder her last name, Leachy. I'm hoping I said that right. Stephanie, you're now on.
Okay. Lichty.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine. My name's Stephanie Lichty. I live at 5292 South, 4475 West in Hooper. I live in the subdivision that is just west of the area that is being considered. And I guess my thought is I live in a newer home, and I moved in on somebody's, beautiful open area as well. My concern isn't the development of the land. It's the fact that we're going to put 40 plus more families in that area. 40 plus families is at least 40 more cars, most likely 80 more cars. Are we planning on widening roads to accommodate that? How are you going to ensure that all these children are going to be getting to school safely? Things like that. The getting in and out, I couldn't see how they're going to get in and out of the townhome neighborhood. And I mean, just like Jeremy said, nobody wants townhomes in their backyard. And it would be one thing if it was like owner townhomes, but the fact that it's going to be rental and we're going to have who knows who coming in and out for how long, like we want an established neighborhood with people that we know. We don't want, 35 new families this year and 40 new ones next year. And then the year after that, there's 20 new more ones. And oh, there's a drug dealer. Bummer. Like, I feel like you're not protecting the people that are here. You're not looking out for our best interests. And to the credit of the men that are trying to develop the land, like if I were in your position, I'd probably be doing something similar, trying to make as much as I could off of the opportunity I've been given. But I need to know, how are you going to protect my kids when there's more cars? How are my babies going to stay safe when there's 80 more cars in my neighborhood? So what's the plan for that?
Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate that.
Like, do you have an answer?
Well, we'll address those at the end. So typically what we do is we
okay.
take the comments, and then at the end, we'll address that.
Okay.
If you want, you can address her questions now. It doesn't have to be all at the end, but it would be, at the end of her comments. Yes, you can talk.
Yeah, so kind of my thoughts on the traffic is anytime you do put more people on roads, that does definitely create traffic. We don't have a site plan, so we don't know what their in and out would look like. It would likely be on 4300. Just looking at it, I don't think there's an alternative to really go through. I don't know whether they would have rights to the cul-de-sac that's back behind there, but more than likely it would be on 4300 is where they would be going.
And my response to the schools, the children walking to school and stuff is, that's the school district. They have people that's their job. That's what transportation does. And that's what the boundary meetings and all of those kind of things that the school district offers is where those types of things are addressed.
So do you know where kids will cross? Will they cross up by Freedom Elementary, or will they be crossing at that intersection heading south and then west?
Well, transportation usually does that. The school district, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but I thought transportation and the school district manages that stuff.
Well, UDOT 5500 South is a UDOT road, so number of crossings is going to be limited. So it'll probably be at that intersection.
Okay.
But either way, if they developed it as single family homes, the same concern would come.
But there would be maybe like 40
Well,
kids versus 180.
I've dealt with this in the past before when we had other apartment complexes that were wanting to go up. And I actually contacted the school district about it and asked them if the local school had even the capacity for it. And I was basically told mind my own business by the school district. They said, well, you do what you do and we make accommodations however we see fit school-wise. And they take care of that. So the school district was not able to or not willing to give me any input or information about how the schools were going to accommodate any type of student volumes in an area. And unfortunately, yes, the traffic is an issue. It always is, and it never won't be an issue. The state roads, it's one of the weird, unfortunate things about how cities have to run and the state, how they control a lot of the state roads. We don't get to decide when they are going to be widened. It's all up to when the state decides they're going to widen it. We are getting 5600 widened. That's been going on for some time now, and it's soon they're going to be actually working on the widening of 56. And some other roads as well, but unfortunately, we can't time developments with the widening of certain roads. And it's unfortunate, and there's a lot of times where you see developments or roads actually being replaced or repaved, and then a construction happens and digs the road up, and it's something that we don't plan, and it's not pushed through us. The city doesn't plan for it, and it's something that whoever develops that area tears up property or the road that was just done and redone. But a lot of that stuff, it's not even looked at by us. We can't review it. Ours, mainly what we have to look at is just the highest and best use of the land, protecting owners' rights and making sure that whatever development might go in would not pose a threat environmentally to the people around in the neighborhoods around. I don't know. There might be some other things some of the other commissioners can make some comments on, but whether or not we like it or not, it's a really tough thing for us to judge as a planning commission, because a lot of the stuff we wouldn't like ourselves, but as a lot of times we're briefed and trained by the state and the lawyers about what we can and cannot do, and we have to do this part of what our job is since we're not elected officials, and we'll pass this on to the city council since they are elected officials, and they can take some extra measures beyond what we can do. So that would be my comments at this time.
Thank you for explaining that to me.
Yeah, but one more comment I'd just like to make about the traffic. I think the hard thing for me being a Roy resident is all of the growth that continues to go out west. You know, I commuted to Summit County up to Colville, and 5600 is a parking lot. I mean, those 3 miles from my house up to the piano gallery where we carpooled, that took me as long as it did to get from there to Colville. And, you know, but the growth just keeps going west and west and west. You know, Roy's pretty much built out. There's a few parcels like this that we're addressing, you know, but all the open vacant land out west just keeps adding more and more and more to our traffic as well. And so the traffic's really a frustrating one for me. I've lived in Roy for since 2003, so 18 years, and it hasn't gotten any better really with any of the projects that have been done, and the continued growth, especially out west, I think is just going to continue to complicate that as well. Any other thoughts or comments from the other commissioners?
Especially on the fact that it's rentals and not like owners.
Yeah, that's one that I've got a note here for. So that's one that, you know, I think is a good discussion point as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
And to the answer to that question on owners versus renters, the city can't look at it. And it makes little value for us to look at as if it's rental only or owner only. We can't look at that type of aspect. Is 12 units per acre appropriate or not? So just to kind of put that in there. Okay, looks like Mr. Purser, Mark Purser is next. Okay, Mark. There you go. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Mark, and
oh, I'm not as good looking as my wife is in that picture. Sorry. Didn't do my hair. But anyway, Steve, I really appreciate the time and thank you for sending me the letter. You probably didn't have to, as I'm a Hooper resident, but we feel like we're a Roy resident. When we bought our house, we thought it was in Roy. But matter of fact, my grandparents who own land out west, way west in Hooper, like they don't consider us East Hooper part of Hooper. We're the other people. But I'm kind of a local kid. I didn't grow up around here, but my dad is from Roy and my mom is from Hooper, and now me and my family live right on the border. So some of you probably went to school with my parents. But yeah, but we appreciate Roy. I mean, I can throw a rock right now and hit Roy, and I know for a fact I can hit Kevin Jones' house with a pitching wedge from my backyard. So I don't hit pitching wedges. But anyway, obviously, I think in regards to the transition zone between Holiday Oil and my house, I think, my opinion, the best transition zone would be nothing. Just leave it as it is. I think that would be a better transition than the townhomes. The traffic concerns, right? They're always there. Matter of fact, on soccer Saturdays at Emma Russell, like we're way better off walking to Emma Russell than we are to drive. I guess I have a concern about the road that comes in out of my neighborhood into the proposed new area. That road would not be used to get into the new development, would it? So that's one concern. I'll keep going. You guys just write that one down. That'd be great. But some of the things that we enjoy in our backyard will be gone. We enjoy big parts of the slough, the open space. We enjoy Kevin's horses. We enjoy the pheasants, the ducks, the wildlife. But most importantly, we enjoy the privacy that we have right now. And in a typical subdivision, most people have 3, 4, maybe 5 houses that can see into their backyard. And when this very high density comes up, obviously we'll have 100 eyes in our backyard. And that's obviously a concern for me as a concern for me, for my property, for my possessions, but most importantly, the additional eyes is a concern for me for me and my 5 children and their safety. Let's see, you guys already touched on some of the, I just want to make it clear that the connecting roads will not connect into our neighborhood. That's a question I had. Additional traffic, I guess, and also additional people in the neighborhood also increases the probabilities of an already pesky theft problem we have in our neighborhood and other misconducts. Let me see. I know you guys don't run the schools, and I know that's not a thing you do, and maybe you should communicate better, or maybe they should communicate better with you, but just know that by adding these townhomes would be a concern for me and a concern for most of the people. As we all know, that Fremont, Weaver, and Roy are all over, or at capacity or over 100% capacity. I know it's not your thing, but just know it's a concern for us by adding very high density. And listen, at the end of the day, I kind of agree with Stephanie, right? We understand that development is ongoing. I live in a house that was once a beautiful, probably piece of farm somebody owned. And if it weren't for development, I wouldn't be living here in this house. And I believe Utah is the fastest growing state in the United States, so I don't see it slowing down. It's going to keep going, at least for my lifetime. But I'm not opposed to building houses on the land as currently zoned as medium density. So my vote or recommendation is to respectfully keep the zoning as is, which is medium housing, and not change it to very high density. I think the medium housing would match what we have right here. I think it would be, I don't think we need a transition buffer of townhomes. I think homes could be a transition buffer just fine. And I also understand that I'm technically a resident of Hooper, not of Roy. So likely my opinion doesn't matter to the majority of you, but I does. Anyway, that's all I got. Steve, thanks again so much for the time. And I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for your comments. Steve, do you know anything about the road, whether they would have access to that? That's kind of the one new question there that's raised.
$43.75. I don't know if you can hear me still, but.
And is that the cul-de-sac that you're referring to on the map?
Yeah, those 2 cul-de-sacs. I live in 4351, but that one right there, yeah, exactly.
So when you look at the county, and again, this is a county map. It's an awesome map. GeoGizmo is what it's called. Property lines aren't exact, so don't, they're going to be off 5 or 6 feet north and west. So, but according to the map, the road, the actual cul-de-sac is probably a temporary. I'd have to find out from Hooper if this road goes through, the cul-de-sac probably goes away. But they do have direct access to that 4375. I can't display it very well, but their layout kind of had a road coming off of 43, crossing the slough, which again, as mentioned before, will require the Army Corps of Engineers and or the State Engineer's Office for approval. and then heading north onto 3575 west, 4375 west. So it's kind of an L shape going in and going out.
I would be really opposed to having an additional 80 cars driving through our neighborhood into the proposed townhomes.
The fire department would love it though. Having 2 access points into a development. So, but again, we're not talking about the site plan exactly. We're the rezone. So, wants to answer any of those questions or concerns that he had. And
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Purser. We appreciate you giving us your input.
Thank you for the time.
Did you want me to kind of answer those, or did you, council or commission, want to look at any of them?
Yeah, does anybody want to say anything else, and then we can let Steve share his thoughts? Go ahead, Steve.
Transition zone, I mean, it really comes down to just what this body and the council would like to do. From a planning standpoint, in the planning world, the best transitions are from commercial to single family residential, some sort of multifamily. It kind of gives the multifamily, blocks the noise from the commercial, and then kind of helps with the single family. Multifamily is also a great buffer along busy. So if the corner lots there on 43 and 55 weren't commercial, they could solve some issues with multifamily. As mentioned before, traffic is traffic. It's going to continue. Hooper, if you look at the projections, is projected to be larger in not capacity, but larger number of people living in Hooper than in Roy. So there'll be more traffic heading east. So that's why we really hope that the Legacy Highway North comes into effect and actually gets into Roy. Before that all happens, we have an ability to get out without having to clog up our east-west roads. Open space, the unfortunate part is that does go away over time. The slough won't. It has to remain, it couldn't be piped, but code was only piping underneath the road and leaving it open. Kid safety is always a concern, regardless if this is a rezone or a site plan development. We look at sidewalks, how people will travel, how people will get in and out. At the end of the day, the unfortunate part is until we are willing to stop driving cars, those are still going to be issues. So I think I got most of your questions.
Thank you. I guess one more question too. Can you guys still hear me, by the way? Yeah.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
So explain to me the jurisdiction of Roy City Police versus Weber County. We've had some issues out here, right? Which do we call? I mean, Roy City's right here. They probably could get here faster, but Weber County we pay Weber County to provide a sheriff. How is that going to work if there's a transition road from a neighborhood into a townhomes? The townhomes being Roy City, but part of the neighborhood, but the other part of the neighborhood being Weber County. Like that doesn't sit right with me. I don't like, I would hope that they would maybe blur the lines a little bit, but I don't know if you guys can talk to those boundaries by chance.
Yeah, so I can't give you all the details, but in my neighborhood, we had unincorporated pockets of Roy that just recently got incorporated within the last couple of years. So literally I could throw a rock at an area that was Weber County. So when they plowed the roads, they'd pick up the plow, they plow Roy and leave that. But they have interlocal agreements. So if there's an emergency or those types of things, when that happened in the Weber County portion, Roy City would respond. And then when Weber County arrived on scene, then they would pass that off over to them. If there was something like a theft or a break-in, then basically Roy City would wait for Weber County to get there if there wasn't an emergency. But they do have a good working relationship between the two. So that was never really an issue in that bubble. I don't know the logistics of their interlocal agreements and contracts, but it did work well for those people, the cooperation between the two agencies. And fire was the same way as well, because Weber Fire would respond to the other ones, where Roy City would respond to the ones in Roy City. And
Boundary
Steve, you
line.
may be able to add some more on that too. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's just weird little boundary lines, that jots, it just, whoever made these lines, Anyway, go ahead, Steve. Sorry not to interrupt you.
Oh, no, it's just interlocal agreements. If it's an emergency, 911 will just dispatch whoever can get there quickest. And like Ryan said, if it's a non-emergency, they'll wait for the other department to get there and then hand it off. Like I'd mentioned before, fire always looks for multiple access points. So if they have to block one, they're not blocking everybody from getting in and out. So again, that's a life safety issue that they like, but site plan wise, it would go through the fire department, police department to look at. So. Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and on to the next one. Thanks again, Mr. Purser. We appreciate you being here.
Okay, let's see. Shane Brown. Sheldon Greener was the next one. He wasn't on earlier, but we'll bring him on now. Hey, Sheldon, you're on. Go ahead and mute yourself, unmute.
All right, let's do the old start video too.
State your name and address.
My name is Sheldon Greener, 5638 South, 6800 West in Hooper. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. I am on the Hooper City Planning Commission, and I used to live right there on 4425 West in Hooper, the road just west of the property proposed for rezone. Many of the people in my old neighborhood have reached out to me with their concerns about this rezone. So of course, I'm not speaking for Hooper City. I just mentioned that I'm on the Planning Commission because I understand at least somewhat the process of what is going on here, and albeit, our cities could do some things slightly different, but one of the concerns that I had was just the process of this rezone. Because like, for example, right after this, I have to run to a Hooper meeting about our general plan being opened up to review the future land use map. This is a process involving many meetings and taking input from as many people as possible to shape the future of that land use map, where with this one, you guys are kind of voting on that change right now. And my concern is that's not really fair to the people that have purchased houses in that area, even if they have taken into account what that future land use map looks like in determining if they're going to live there. People rely on those maps to determine those things. And in this case, you're making that change essentially with very short notice and very little input from people being affected by it. No one that I have talked to is opposed to the property being developed as it is currently zoned, or the medium high density single family that it is on the future land use map. But they feel that making a drastic change isn't fair to the citizens of either of our cities, being right there on the border of the two of them. If there was a natural barrier between, Hooper and Roy, where this is that pocket into Hooper, then I feel like I think that the citizens of Hooper would feel less like they're just kind of getting this dumped in their lap. If our situations were reversed, I would recommend to our city council that we put something on the border inside of a pocket like this. As is noted, further south, we have those in Hooper that are kind of similar, but those are once again on the Hooper side of the road in Hooper, and being owner occupied, I do feel like that makes a difference for some of the other concerns I'll bring up here in a minute. The other concerns that people have already kind of mentioned are that intersection right there, that rezone would result in hundreds of additional cars passing through that overly busy intersection. I think we can all agree that higher density houses come with increased risk of crime, especially because these are not owner occupied. The people living closest to this would be the most negatively affected. In this case, the people of Hooper. Schools are already overloaded. My daughter just finished up at Freedom last year, and she spent almost every year in the portables out back. I think only 1 or 2 years did she have a classroom inside of the actual school. They mentioned that these were going to be like those townhomes going in over on 21st Street. I don't know if you guys have looked at those. I think those are very much an eyesore. They pack those in so tight. They definitely will negatively impact the property values of the surrounding people's houses. And just a little thought for me, take it for whatever it's worth. If Royce City is interested in adding townhomes or large apartment complexes, their tax base, I would propose demolishing the old Albertsons building and putting them there. There is plenty of infrastructure up at the east end of Roy to handle this type of development. And I would just ask that you guys vote no on this rezone tonight. Thank you.
Great, thanks for your comments. And as far as demolishing the Albertsons, I think that'd be one of the most insane things we could do with Ocean Mart, the tax revenue that brings in, and with what we've done along 1900. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but we've rezoned that to be mixed use development. So that's definitely something that we've put into our plan as Roy City Planning Commissioners and as a city council. So we are addressing that in areas where the infrastructure is definitely there. So just a point there. The things, I think, traffic, crime, schools, I think we've addressed all of those. Property value over time, that, the things that I've seen on that is, there is maybe a little small impact, but most of the time property value increases at such a rate, especially in Utah, that's not necessarily a huge impact on those around it. The crime, obviously, that's an area that can be increased when you have more people. Obviously, there can be more crime. And as far as the process, you typically, if we're looking at the general plan, it's in larger scope. This is kind of a smaller parcel, and that's kind of why it's being done the way that it is. Any other comments from planning commissioners? Steve, anything else that you would like to add to that? Okay, nope. Thank you very much, Mr. Greener, for your time. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
All right, we had one more, Steve, is that correct? You're still muted.
No, there's a few. I'm just going through. There was 10 that had requested, and they're not all online. So I'm trying to go through the list as we. Kathleen Purser had requested, so I'll bring her on. I think we've seen that picture before. Go ahead, Kathleen, unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Catherine. Do I have to turn on my video or is that fine?
No, I mean, it'd be nice, but you don't have to.
Okay.
Sorry for mispronouncing your name.
That's okay. I'm just in the car, but I can for a minute. Bye, I'll be in a minute. Okay, so I'm Catherine. I'm Mark's wife. Most of my concerns are similar. We realize that it's zoned for I think it's medium density now in the single family homes. And my concerns are similar. They've kind of already been voiced, but I'll just add to it. That just the higher density is just the more people, the more the traffic, especially if it does connect through the neighborhood, that would increase the traffic significantly. I understand the safety for the fire department, and I think I would be very for that. I think that needs to be so. And for that reason, especially if that is an incentive to use both accesses, especially that one through the neighborhood that kind of you know, it kind of weaves through the neighborhood around, you come into the neighborhood in a couple corners before you get to that cul-de-sac entrance. That would just increase, yeah, just the route there. And I understand if the fire, like if they need that for the fire, so even more so, that makes me want to just try to keep it in the single family homes for that reason. But those are just mostly my concerns. I realize that it will be developed, it sounds like, but if we could just keep it in the single family homes for all those other reasons, yeah, the traffic and the kids and the safety and the slough. And I wonder, I don't know if I understand that, I don't really know who owns the slough. I know there's some areas in Roy where they have the fence, you know, like right on the canal side. I don't know if that would be something that would happen, especially with that proposed map where there's homes really close to it. Anyway, those are just my concerns. That's all. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Steve, did you catch anything that was new in there that we haven't addressed? I think we've addressed most of those issues,
Other
but we
than
appreciate you.
who owns the slough, and it all depends. In this case, the property owner has rights to it, even though development wise, it does need to go through the Army Corps and state engineers. To the north of this, the slough, that property was actually dedicated to Hooper. So they have rights to that. And then as you head north and east, it was dedicated to Roy. So we have to maintain that and do its upkeep. But from this property going south, it is all under private ownership. So what they do with it would have to, you know, they would have to maintain it. Now in their development, you know, they would have to be able to provide safety for the kids. So, you know, maybe they'll fence it off. Maybe they'll finish off the trail, you know, heading a little more farther south. And then maybe get with the property owner there, the west of the properties at front 55 and see if, you know, they can continue. And maybe they just say, you know, let's dedicate that to Roy and make them take over. There's many options that can be done, but right now it's under private ownership.
Steve, can I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
So will you remind me what that area is zoned right now? Because it's medium density, correct?
It is zoned RE20, which is actually low density. So they have to have 20,000 square feet per lot.
So before you mentioned, because it's what I'm hearing is the big issue is the number of, so if someone wanted to put townhouses there, they couldn't because the lots are too big, right?
Well, right now,
Yeah,
right now the zoning doesn't allow for anything more than single family homes on just about half an acre of land.
So when the other gentleman spoke and he said, the guy from Hooper, the planning commission, he said, if you went medium to high density, does that mean it could be townhouses?
Well, you're getting two different types of maps and terminology mixed up. The general plan talks about low, medium, and high and very high density. It's the zoning map that dictates what can be on there. So, you know, if Mr. Jones says, you know, I just want half-acre lots and that's it, he wouldn't even have to do a public hearing for the rezone. He would just go ahead and develop. If he wanted to change the zoning to an R16 or an R17, you know, single family on smaller lots, we wouldn't have to amend the general plan because it calls for it to be medium density. The reason why we're doing a general plan and the rezone is because the general plan doesn't say it to be very high density. So what can be done is a zoning map, and what the future is a land use map.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because in our discussions, when we talked about the changing the general plan to the mixed use, I just remember you talking about the wording is sometimes confusing, that it's not necessarily more houses, but it just sounds like more houses or more structures. So that's what I was trying to understand, that because
in our zoning ordinance, 6,000 square feet is about 7 units per acre. An R2 zone allows for 11.5 units per acre. An R2 is a duplex zone.
Okay,
What the general plan would call very high density, which is our R3 and R4, allows for 12 units per acre. Now the R2 is high density and the very high is R3 and R4. And the only difference between the two, the zoning wise, is a half a unit.
yeah. Okay, that's what I was trying to make sure I remembered. So thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, we'll switch up. Look at my list of people that had originally. Oh, there we go. Kathy Brady Purser is the next one. Hey, Brady, you are on. Go ahead and unmute yourself. And
all right. Well, I am of no relation to the other two Pursers. I just happen to share the same last name of them. But I do have the same, want to echo the same thoughts and concerns.
You state your address for us real quick, and then please do share your concerns.
Yes. So my address is 5440 South, 4425 West in Hooper. So my backyard is right up against the lot, the empty lot right now. And like I said, I share the same concerns that most other people have shared over the last little bit. With me, one of my selfish concerns is right now, I don't have a fence in that backyard. I do like the open space to be able to see out into the field, to see the horses, to see the wildlife. And knowing, you know, I have to put up a fence, some additional safety concerns. And I just would like to echo the same comments as far as the traffic and that safety. You know, from what I understand is from what the plan I saw would be, the road would be right up against that my property line, and having a road right up against my property line is always concerning, especially a high volume road if we're talking about. I even know what, 2 or 3 weeks ago, a child at Freedom Elementary was hit by a car on the way to school. I think a couple months ago, my wife said, but just adding to the safety concerns that have already been said, the traffic, the safety of many additional people in the area, and the traffic of the subdivision. You know, my house is the 4th one on that street, and people already come into that street pretty quick. And we've got a lot of kids playing basketball and soccer and football all down the neighborhood, and adding 40 to 80 more cars on that road is very concerning to me. So really, I don't have anything new that hasn't been said, but I just want to let those thoughts be known. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. All right, and I think we've addressed most of those issues throughout, so just appreciate you restating that for us. Thank you. You're on mute again, Steve.
Of the 10 that had requested, that is all of them that are currently online. I do have 2, and I'm just saying this, I do have 2 that have their hands up. I don't know if they want to talk again or not, but that is up to you if you want them to speak again. It's Mr. McReynolds and Mr. Greener.
Yeah, we're still in the public comment, so I think we'll go ahead and we'll allow that, but let's just keep the comments really brief because you have had some time to do that. So let's give a 1 minute time limit for them to state any additional concerns.
Mr. McReynolds will be coming on.
You hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, just want to say one quick thing. I as well have 5 kids in my home. We do a lot of charity work with Soap to Hope, which specializes in human trafficking, and Utah is a main hub throughout the United States of human trafficking. It's a problem that's just gone haywire just because the Salt Lake Airport doesn't deal with it. Nobody deals with it. So a problem that I see is having all these people come in that we don't know, that are not owners. These are the high markets of people that are involved with human trafficking and stealing children, statistically. but that is my main concern with all of us having kids connecting to Hooper. I mean, human trafficking in Utah is the biggest, and we are growing exponentially as well. So I really would appreciate that being taken into consideration. If this was your home,
All right, thank you. That's 1 minute there, Mr. McReynolds. But thank you. I think we get the gist of what you're saying there.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, now Mr. Greener.
Hey, thanks for letting me come back on. I just had one more quick question I wanted to ask as far as, and the other person, yeah, I kind of touched on it, but didn't really ask. Would this be considered dissimilar use? Would they have, if it was rezoned as the townhomes, your R3, would they have to put up a fence surrounding? I would imagine that the commercial bordering it already would have to put up a fence, but would this have to have a fence up around the property adjacent to it for the people that are already living there in Hooper? That's just what I was wondering. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Great question.
I believe that is correct, that they would be required to have a fence along the west and north, but as they develop. So maybe they do it in phases. So phase 1 is out by 43. So fencing would probably come, but it would be probably a requirement if I remember right. I'd have to go back and look, but I think you're correct on the dissimilar use.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good night.
Okay, that is everybody.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the public comment.
I move that we close the public comment session.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, Commissioner Sparrow, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Oh, perfect. Any opposed? It's hard to tell when we're on a video because you just hear it and don't see it. So with that, our public hearing's closed. Are there any other questions or comments from the commission? Now's the time we can talk amongst ourselves and whatnot before we have a motion on that.
Steve, since I'm an alternate, am I allowed to ask questions? I just can't vote tonight.
Well, today, both Don Ashby and Chris Collins are absent. So both you and Jason are not alternates at this time. You are on the committee.
Okay. So Kevin, I have a couple questions for you. That be okay? Mr. Jones, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so as we know, and what I'm hearing from most people is they just don't want renters in the area. So seems like.
Okay, sorry, I got to interrupt, and I'm really sorry to interrupt, Annette.
That's okay.
Hi.
Who's
This is
interrupting?
Brody, the city
Brody.
attorney.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And I think I just want to lay out a couple things before you guys have your discussion. We've had some good discussion, obviously some passionate people. I do think in our discussion though, you need to think about kind of some fundamental fairness issues. There was a lot of arguments made against renters, and I would just caution the planning commission members to somehow, I don't want to say avoid it, because if you want to have that discussion, you can, but somehow the city or the planning commission members taking some sort of position that a renter is some sort of second-class citizen to someone who buys it, that is totally inappropriate to a reason to base a decision on. The property owner, if they want to sell the townhouses, good on them. If they want to rent them out, that's their choice. But our analysis as to what the zone should be, quite frankly, you're not even to the point of what type of things are going in there. The analysis right now is on the zone. What should it be zoned at? And quite, I would think it highly improper to somehow say, well, we like the zone as long as renters don't come. To me, that's prejudicial and inappropriate. So I just wanted to lay that out there for all commission members as we go forward. And then I didn't mean to cut you off, but you brought up the question. I think I know where you were going with the question, but I just wanted to jump in there and put that out at the start of your discussion. That should not be a decision. And quite frankly, it would be an improper reasoning that could get the city in trouble if that was something that you based your decision on today, either way.
I'm not sure where you thought I was going with that, Brody, but what I was going to ask actually is if you're going to build these townhomes, you talked about the property management company. Are they going to be out of state? Are they going to be in state? Because I think that makes a big difference for people versus renters and owners. I have rented most of my life. I've been a single parent most of my life. I have not been a drug dealer. My kids have not caused crimes and mischief in the neighborhood. And I know many other people who are and have been in that same position, being single parents and trying to raise children on one income and so forth. So I'm just wondering, you know, once you have your property company, I know they do vast background checks. I mean, besides credit reports, I don't even think people understand how extensive those are. But I'm just thinking, you know, if you're going to have a property management company, would they be local? Because I think that might make a difference for people to know if they are going to be local. Because if they are, you know, it might be easier for, or more palatable, shall we say, if people know there's going to be someone, you know, that they can call on an 801 phone number that isn't living in Wisconsin. No offense to anybody in Wisconsin. I don't know if that's appropriate to ask, Brody, but I think in these instances when zoning is going to be changed, I think that part of the consideration should be that the residents want to be heard. And what I'm hearing is that they're very worried about renters, and I understand that. Again, I've been a long-term renter myself, but I think I know where they're coming from. But I also think that if we understand that you're going to have someone local that's going to take care of that, it might help mitigate some of their concerns. Do you follow?
Yep, I agree 100%. And we're definitely planning on using a local in-state company to do that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Question as well, Annette. Say there was a code issue that our code enforcement officer goes and gets. He's going to contact the management company, and if they can't, you know, if they're out of California, can't come, it's going to be a lot more difficult. So again, it's, I mean, a good question, but majority of those, our management companies are here. Kind of to go on along with Brody's a little bit, even if they sold all these units, it doesn't mean that the person couldn't then turn around and rent the unit.
Exactly.
So Steve, I have a question for you. Can you throw back up the map that had the street right across from Emma Russell with the townhomes that are there in Hooper?
Okay. Share this, there we go. That one?
Not that one yet. Oh yeah, it is that one. So these are kind of an interesting, these have intrigued me for a long time. My son has a friend that lives right on that street. And when we've taken them over there, you hardly even notice that those are apartments, even though they're right on a major road. So my question, Steve, if this was to be rezoned as R13, would that preclude them from building single family homes in part of it? My thought here, my question really is it possible that we could do something where maybe there's apartments or townhomes towards the front of it, but then some single family residential, kind of like they've done there in Hooper in this area, in that type of a zone?
Yeah, the zoning is R3. R3 does allow for single family, duplex, or multifamily. So they do have options. If the developer wanted to say, do single family homes on the west side of it, multifamily on the east side of it, they could. They do have that option. But again, at this stage of a rezone, I don't know if it's a
right.
It can dictate that that's what our approval is based on.
Because just looking at on the surface, this addresses a lot of the concerns that have been made to where you could still have a higher density. And like you said, this may not be the appropriate time to have it, but just thinking out loud, if you did something like this there, that allows a higher density by the major road, and then a small transition there into the neighborhood where it might not be quite as imposing.
I want to put this out on the table before we make a vote, and just listening to all the comments. I'm certainly, anybody that knows me knows what I do. I'm not opposed to development by any stretch. I have young kids, one that just got married last week. They had a really tough time finding residents. So I certainly think that as much housing as we can manage to accommodate our residents without them moving away, I'm certainly for that. The question coming back to, whether this piece of property is most appropriate for high density multifamily living, just looking at the neighborhoods around it, and the nearest scenario being several hundred feet away, half a mile up the road. I'm not sure I'm convinced that a high density is the most appropriate application for this property. I'm just going to put that out there for discussion. Looking around, these are all single family neighborhoods around us. There is commercial to the south, but I still think, and it's not up to me to make the recommendation for that, but I don't know that a high density, in my opinion, is the most appropriate. I can certainly be talked out of it, but from what I'm seeing, that's my thought.
I also would prefer it be a little less dense, but I share your same views and opinions there from what you've stated, Jason. So appreciate your comments.
Oh, Steve, what's the zone of the other apartments that are already there?
There aren't any.
They're over down across from the park.
That's over in Hooper.
It's in Hooper, so I'm not quite sure. I didn't look down there what that zoning was.
Well, there's those apartments across from Emma Russell too, though. Those townhouses.
Those are the ones in the red
Yeah,
squares.
what's that zoned?
Those are in Hooper.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
'cause
so
that side of the street.
4300s. Yeah,
Yeah, sorry, I knew that. I'm tired.
that's all right.
I'm confused.
Yeah, in any of the multifamily zones, really the density isn't that big of a factor because we're looking at 11.5 units in
Versus
an
12.
R2
Yeah.
versus 12. So I mean, really, there's not a density factor really, other than perhaps going to another residential zone that's less than the RE20.
So there's not a smaller zone where they could have like apartment or townhouses, but not so many. I see Steve shaking his head.
No, because it's really 11.5 is the lowest density of any type of multifamily, unless I'm wrong on that, Steve. But in reading through that and refreshing it earlier today, 11.5 is the lowest we could go.
The R2 zone allows for duplexes that would have to be subdivided into individual parcels, but it allows 11.5 units per acre. Where your R3 multifamily or R4 multifamily allows for 12.
My personal preference would be going away from duplex type development.
And
Go ahead, Smith.
Well, I was just saying, I mean, houses are so expensive. I'm with you, Jason. Like, we have a rental and it's so hard, like, to charge what you have to charge to not, I don't know, for a house, because otherwise kids just want to live there. So, I mean, I get the whole rental thing, but I mean, it might look super weird to have those big, tall apartments right there when Steve puts that on there, when it is all those houses. And then all this empty field. Does that mean then this empty field could all become houses too? If that one becomes where they want that multi or the high density, then does that automatically make that field next to it high density also? Or would they have to zone for that?
Which open field?
Like where it says 40, yeah, the big open area that's just to the other side of it.
That's
Hooper. In
That's
Hooper.
That's Hooper.
Oh.
So unless they annex into Roy, we wouldn't have any jurisdiction.
Okay.
How that's developed.
And as far as one quick question there, Samantha, just while you're on the topic of height, isn't it 35 feet either way, Steve, whether it's a house or?
Oh, that's right. You're right.
Yeah, the height is 35 feet.
I forgot.
So regardless of which one it
Single-family.
is, the height would be similar between a house and either a townhome or an apartment.
And does this fall under that thing where we have to do affordable housing. Remember you talked to us about that law where you have to have so much multifamily housing? Is that part of like what would fall in to meet us that rule? Remember we had that rule? Don't we have a rule? I tell everyone the multifamily housing, it's a rule.
The state does require every city to have moderate to low income housing, but it does not always have to be multifamily. Majority of Roy's low income housing to meet that are the single family homes east of the railroad. They're born, they were built in the 40s and 50s. They're not as expensive as the homes out west. Multifamily doesn't necessarily always mean cheap and affordable as well. There are things that the city can do if they say, okay, we'll allow you to do it this way, but 10% of them have to be low or moderate. The applicant can also do that and, get with companies that help subsidize. But the more housing, we are in a housing shortage. Last time I spoke with a realtor, he quoted about 50,000 rent or units short. And that's as of a month ago. So, the more we can get, the better. But, that's why you guys are going to make the big decision tonight to recommend something to the council, and they make even the bigger decision to approve it or not. But, the supply and demand, if we all of a sudden were 20,000 more than we needed, housing wouldn't be as expensive. It'd be cheaper because you're wanting to get someone in the house, whether it be owner or renter.
I will say though, when I went to the boundary meetings for the different schools for the boundary, because I was on the committee, they did say the statistics that the state gave said that more multifamily housing doesn't necessarily populate the schools more. It's single family homes that populate the schools more. So when people were worried about those increasing classes and stuff, I don't know if that's entirely true, because unless the state lied to us, which they could have, I don't know. But they did say more single family homes give more children to schools than apartment type housing.
Wouldn't we have that data through the census though? If we really wanted to drill down that far.
I don't, Annette, I was just making a comment.
No, I'm just saying the information has to be out there somewhere, right?
Yeah, the census gets as small as a block. Okay. So you might have 10 homes and it might tell you how many people are in there, but it doesn't say there's 10 in this house and 2 in that one.
Gotcha.
They still try to protect people's rights, so they don't get it to an individual household. The smallest they go is a block.
Well, since you confirmed that all the houses will be the same height, then I think people should be able to rent. And I don't know. I think that if that's that guy's land, if he wants to do it, he wants to do it. And that's good. That makes lots of money.
I think, again, I just want to emphasize, I have nothing against multifamily. I think we need housing. I totally agree. I think, I have nothing against rentals. I rented, my kids rent. But my feeling is, I don't know if ultra high density is appropriate for this piece of ground.
So Commissioner Felt, just kind of going off of the idea that I had, and I know that's kind of hard in this because we're looking at the piece as a whole. Would your thoughts change on that if there was high density towards the east part of that yellow and then residential homes on the back end towards the subdivision? Would that change your mind at all on that?
If that were an option, yeah, it would. I think my concern is just staying consistent with the neighborhood around it and trying to keep harmony in the neighborhood. And again, I know that multifamily has in the past and everywhere been an appropriate transition from commercial to residential. But I think, just looking at the neighborhood in general, it's one gas station. It's not a commercial hub. And I think the neighborhood in general, consistently all around, is single family homes. And so that's where my opinion is coming from, not really from any concern about traffic necessarily, because I know traffic is going to be what it is and development is always going to precede the need for change there. So that is what it is. It's just simply looking at this piece and, responsibility is looking at this piece of ground and saying, you know, what's the most appropriate application or use for this property and being consistent with the neighborhood around it. I don't know that 12 units per acre is consistent. That's my feeling. Yeah, if we had single family that was adjacent to the existing single family, if that were an option to vote on, and then we could do something a little higher, you know, on the east side of the channel where we could do multifamily, that kind of a scenario I think I would be in favor of. But whereas we don't have that luxury, I would say, you know, if this were an application or petition for single family, I think that would be more appropriate.
Well, just to help this conversation, Kevin, what are your thoughts? Because again, the R3 zone does allow for single family homes. You guys could make a recommendation, and if Kevin is okay with it, you know, the city council at their level, they could do a development agreement, allow it to be an R3, and develop an agreement saying that the west of the slough is developed as a single family R1, you know, 6,000 square foot single family homes, and the east side is multifamily. But it would still be one zone. But it really comes down to what Kevin wants, and you know, ultimately you guys can make a recommendation to, you know, R3 with those conditions. That would go to the council and they can make the decision. But knowing I'm not the voting member on here, and I don't want to dictate the conversation, but maybe ask Kevin what his thoughts are.
Yeah, Kevin, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're not opposed to doing something of that nature. The slough has always kind of been an issue where it cuts through the property and how to develop in and around it. So I've had that idea before to, like you say, put the more higher density townhomes on the east side and the 6,000 square foot or 7,000 square foot lots on the west side. I would not be opposed to that.
Because I think I would become very comfortable with that scenario, where right now I'm kind of on the fence, because I definitely see the need for housing, and I have a huge respect for people's property rights and being able to do on their property what they want to, unless it infringes on the health, safety, and welfare of those around them. And I think that's kind of a win-win in looking at that scenario. And if you drive by those ones by Emma Russell, I mean, it took me going to my son's friend's house like 3 or 4 times before I was like, hey, wait a minute, those are apartments there. Those are fourplexes. And so that's kind of where I'm at. You know, if we could do something like that, I think that definitely makes me a lot more comfortable and makes.
Yeah. And like I said, you know, we've been here for 10 years. We're vested in the community. I know pretty much every person that has talked tonight, and I don't want to ruffle feathers. I know that this project has kind of got to that point, but it's an opportunity for us, and it was put in a position where we feel like we need to take the best advantage of what we're given. And again, I don't want to create all the issues with the neighbors and whatnot. We're not looking to cram in 100 units on this property. We're not looking to eke out every ounce of space for a townhome. You know, we want to make it nice. We want to make it blend in with the community, be a place, a desirable location that people would want to live in. You know, so yeah, I'm not opposed to making some compromise to make this happen. And if it means to put some R16 or R17 on the west side, and if that's what it takes to get you guys to vote in this rezoning, then yeah, we're great with that. But we do feel that being next to the commercial, and I do want to say that nobody from Roy has called in tonight. Nobody from the east side of the road has voiced their opinion in objection. And those are all kind of starter homes. In my mind, they're like 1,600 square foot homes on a 7,000 square foot lot. It's a starter home, and it lines the entire east side of 4300 West. I think some nice townhomes on this side would complement that just fine. There's the buffer with the piece that Hooper City owns to the north and the slough. And, you know, the only place where our property really butts up against anybody is on the west side with the Higley Meadows community. And I get it that people don't want change. They don't want to see a bunch of houses come in and new people and new faces, but I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing either if it's done correctly. And that's just kind of my thoughts on that.
Can I add something to help out with Kevin here? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Another thought I had is, depending on density, I wonder if we got the density we need to make it pencil, because obviously as a single family residence there, with the commercial gas station being there, it's now devalued as a single family residence. Like there really is no, that's a hard lot to sell. However, if we can get some density on the east side of the slough, I wonder if we can throw some green space, maybe a trail, maybe a little park area on the west side of the slough. But again, depending on density, but I kind of feel like that would help the Hooper residents and the Roy residents, which mostly would benefit the Hooper people. But there is some give and take there, right? I mean, that would probably help both sides. I can't guarantee that would happen yet. I mean, we'd have to look at what you guys would approve, but we're completely open to adding that green space, which would give, some of these residents that buffer, maybe not put the fence up for the one resident. The other resident can still hit his pitching wedge out there, all those things. If we can make that work, we're completely open to that.
I like those compromises. Those sound good to me.
Well, and just so you know, with any multifamily development, they are required to have green space. So how they develop that really comes down to the site development, which you guys will look at if this is approved. The slough is a great little amenity. Allowing the trail to continue on from the Hooper side on the north and getting a little farther south, does add character, does add, stuff to it. So I think if you guys went that route, suggesting that the west side is more single family development and the east side is more multifamily, again, they're going to have a requirement for open space. So that isn't something that they can not have. So.
Commissioner Brand or Commissioner Payne, do you have any thoughts on this? I haven't heard anything from you, and I'd love to get your thoughts.
My
Go ahead,
my
George.
my first thought is, are we being premature? I hear a lot of talk about we could do this or we could do that, or maybe this would work or would that work? I don't know if we have a fully developed plan other than the proponent saying he wants to put in 40 townhouses on that property. And I think that's the question before us tonight. If we're going to decide that, we need to do that. If we're going to decide something else, then maybe we need further discussions.
Can I just say one thing real quick? I hear a lot of people putting out a specific number. We have a preliminary map that we had an engineer draw up just for visual reference. We don't have a specific number in mind. We want to do it right. We want to make it look good. We want to, again, make this an attractive piece of property. It's not all about a set number just to get them in there and make as much money as possible. That's not what we're doing. So where I hear, like you mentioned, 40 townhomes, again, we don't have a set number that we're looking at doing. We're going to make the best use of the land if given the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. Commissioner Payne, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I was just thinking, I mean, we're supposed to be looking at whether we're going to change the zoning on it, but we're trying to plan everything along with it too, and that's up to the people that own it. I think we're trying to get a little ahead of ourselves before we do the zoning change or not the zoning change.
Yep, and so kind of my thoughts on that, I think both of you are absolutely correct. And so my kind of thought is, as it's currently zoned, there are no options other than single family homes. And so my kind of thought here is to consider potentially rezoning this, but putting those recommendations or those conditions, knowing that we're a preliminary recommending body to the council. But if we don't take any action, then this is nothing else can happen on this property as is, other than it would be remaining in that RE20 zone. So that's just kind of my thoughts is, to look at this, I think it's been a great discussion, and you're both correct. We shouldn't be planning it out. But to consider some other possibilities, I think would have been irresponsible not to have that discussion and look at what some of the alternatives are there as well.
For the record, I don't know if RE20 is the most appropriate application for this property either. So just to put that on the table as well. So I appreciate
very good
what you
point.
said. Ryan, I
Thanks for making
appreciate
it
that.
more complicated.
And you guys can, make the recommendation, and not to put words in it, say, you do recommend approval of an R3 with the suggestion that council look at having the west side be developed as single family and the east side allowed to be multifamily. You guys could make those recommendations, so when the council does take it under, they have what you guys think or want or suggest that it could be. They can definitely approve it that way as well. Whether it be a development agreement or just flat out, they just say, this is what the west side is, this is what the east side is. So I think, again, you guys underestimate your authority. I hate to use that word, but you guys can make recommendations. It doesn't have to be all multifamily or all nothing. You could recommend it because the R3 zone does allow for single family homes.
So I can't make a motion, but just for me, my last remarks before that is, and my suggestion would be to do exactly what we've kind of talked about here and Steve just talked about, is recommending the higher density on the west side along 4300 and then residential on the east side, so
I'm
that
in
there is a
agreement.
little bit of a
Those
buffer
turn
there.
around.
I agree with that.
I would support that.
So I think we're to the point where I can entertain a motion.
I can't make the motion. I don't know what to say.
Well, it's two motions, so the general plan will have to be first and then the rezone after.
Well, I don't have your cheat sheet, Steve. Sorry, I can't remember how I'm supposed to do it. I know you say with conditions.
Well,
Recommendations.
put words in your mouth, so.
Well, it's not that. I just know there's a process. Jason.
Well, no, you
Clark.
can, to be simple, you could just say, I move to approve with the conditions as recently discussed or as mentioned by so-and-so, or.
Oh, yeah, I could do that. Okay, I'll make
It
a
doesn't have to
motion.
be a labyrinth and, like the chorus generally does.
Okay, I'll try. I move to make a motion for Mr. Jones's project on 4300 West as noted in the staff, as noted by the commissioner's discussion.
Is this the general plan or the rezone?
Which one's first?
General plan.
General plan, to the general plan for the Mr. Jones's property on 4300 West and considering the conditions that were discussed.
All right, so just to summarize that, we're doing the general plan from medium density to single family residential to very high density multifamily residential, with the recommendation that the east side be higher density with potentially residential on the, I said that backwards, on the east side, the higher density, on the west side, the lower density.
With your general plan, you wouldn't do that. That's the rezone that you would.
Okay.
Put that amendment or condition.
All right.
Sorry.
No, so to summarize that, then the general plan is just going from medium density single family to very high density multifamily residential. Is that the motion, Commissioner
That's
Bills?
the motion. Thank you, Mr.
Perfect.
Ryan.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Oh,
All right, Commissioner Brand, this is a roll call, correct?
This is roll call because it's a legislative item. Commissioner Spar,
Aye.
Commissioner Payne,
Aye.
Commissioner Cowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Bills,
aye.
Commissioner Felt,
Aye.
Commissioner Brand,
Aye.
Commissioner Mifflin.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved.
All right, the other motion is in order as well.
Okay, I'll take a crack at this. Make a motion that we amend the zoning from RE20 residential estates to R3 multifamily residential with conditions as discussed with the commission.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Well, that was almost a tie. We'll go with Commissioner Spar on that. I think he was a hair faster. Another roll call vote.
Sorry, I'm writing down the conditions just so I remember. Single family west, multifamily east, right?
Yes.
Commissioner Mifflin,
Aye.
Commissioner Brand,
Who?
Brand,
Aye.
Commissioner Felt,
Aye.
Mr. Bills,
Aye.
Sarah Cowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Payne,
Aye.
Commissioner Spar.
Aye.
Okay. That one too also is approved. This item I'll get with Matt. It'll probably not be on the next one, but be on the first one in June or sometime in June. So I will let you know, Kevin, okay?
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Kevin, for being on here, and thank you for the public for your comments, and commissioners, that was a great discussion. Great job. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is consider a request for the site plan and architectural approval for Terry's Townhomes located approximately 5154 South, 2700 West.
Can,
Yes,
Steve, I
go
was
ahead,
doing this
Commissioner
in the
Wilson.
wrong order. I didn't realize this was Janae Terry's husband because I missed the name. And I don't feel like I should participate with the Terrys because I serve on a committee pretty close with Janae. And so I know it's the wrong time to say conflict, but I missed his name. So I think can I excuse myself now?
Yeah, do you have a financial interest or business interest with them, or is it just a personal relationship?
Well, we serve on a committee together and I help with all the stuff. I don't know. I just am not feeling very comfortable and I just feel.
I'll let
that
Bro
math-
substitute any words that he needs, but this isn't a rezone. This is just a site plan. So
Oh, okay. Okay,
and
then it's okay.
architecture has to meet the ordinance. So all you would be doing is saying this.
Okay.
This can and will meet the ordinance. So you're not
Okay.
requesting for it to rezone to something that maybe.
Oh, good. Okay, then we're good. Never mind. I take all that back.
Yeah, just to jump in and clarify, this is not something where I think you'd need to be conflicted out. If you really felt some sort of conflict or personal conflict, you could certainly recuse yourself. But basically, for the reasons Steve stated, you do not have to conflict yourself out.
Thank you. Brody has spoken, so we're set. And are the applicants on here, Steve?
Yes, they're both under Brenda Nelson. I've already included them on here. So Doug and Brenda, if you guys want to unmute yourself. And
Can you hear us?
Yep.
Let's see, we can start video as well. Okay, we're on.
Wow. Okay.
I'm gonna zoom in. Okay, we're good.
All right, so we'll have you go ahead and explain your project and kind of your site plan that you've got there and what you're planning to do. I know we had this a while back on our agenda, so I think most of us are pretty familiar with the project, but now we're just kind of looking at the site plan and the architectural plan for it. So if you could walk us through that, that would be great.
Steve, do you have the plan that you can share on the screen? Okay, there you go. You're up, Doug.
Okay, this plan here shows 36 units. As we look at it, we're only zoned for 34, so we'll have to take 2 of them off there And my goal is to take 2 off the north end there somewhere. And that way I can do a roundabout to assist in a fire truck possibly coming into that area. Currently, we're also the townhomes that we're building are 31 feet tall. We don't have that on the blueprints yet, but I called the guy that's Jay Lynn at Creations West today and got that confirmed from him, so we know the height of them. We have a lot of trees on the property, and we're going to try to keep most of them trees there. We do not have a actual landscape plan yet, but I've reached out to a couple of people, and that'll be forthcoming. Well, I'm not sure what kind of questions you guys might be looking for also.
Sorry, couldn't unmute myself. Yeah, if you just walk us through kind of the whole project, and then as questions arise, the commissioners can ask you those, or we can ask those all at the end.
Okay, my goal is to put townhomes. They're currently around 1,700 feet if I just do 2 levels, but the more I look at it, I might dig a basement underneath them and do 3 levels, which would allow for a 4-bedroom unit to accommodate families a little bit better. The blueprints we have are similar to the ones down on Midland Drive, a place called Stone Creek subdivision. They look really nice. We have a plat map drawn. We have an elevation drawn, and we have a view that shows the property overlaying my property with all the trees and stuff. I don't know if Steve has that view also, but it kind of shows all the trees that are already there, and we're going to leave most of them there.
Steve, do you have the one? There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, so all the trees that we can, we'll leave in except for the road coming into the property. The few trees will have to be removed. And then very at the east end, next to the railroad tracks, there's quite a few trees that I've already taken quite a few of them down where that parking will go.
Nice land.
And my goal is also to do it in 2 to 3 phases, starting at the south end, building and then continuing north. And that gives me time to get rid of, I have a garage, an old barn, and a home that'll have to come down.
Okay, do any of the commissioners have any questions for them?
Yeah, I do. Where would the dumpsters be for these, for this project?
Well, at the end of each street, I have additional parking that I'll probably put them in there. We haven't got that far yet with exactly where the dumpsters will go, but I'll have room at the end of each street for dumpsters.
Some of these communities could have individual garbage as well.
Yes,
Some
they
of your
could.
Some of your HOAs will have that.
Yes, and we'll definitely have an HOA here locally.
I don't see any pedestrian circulation on the side. Are you going to be providing sidewalks to accommodate pedestrians being able to access their units?
Yeah, so what we'll do is coming in off the street, which there's not drawn, but there'll be sidewalks going all the way east. And then I currently have it drawn there so that it's all concrete in front of their houses. So we could have that as a sidewalk almost on every unit. So even though the road is not very large, but the driveways are going to be huge, and they're all going to be 2-car garages.
Okay, so where are the fronts of the units? Just curious.
Where the roads go.
Where the drives and the concrete pads are?
Yes, that is the fronts.
Those are the fronts?
Yeah, and that on the west is 2,700. So in the background is all them existing trees that I have that'll make it really nice. Which there's trees almost all the way around the whole property. Any other questions?
All right, sounds like you're up, Steve.
Okay, so this is a request to consider a site plan and architectural approval of Terry's Townhomes. They're at 5154 South 2700 West. We've seen this kind of a bit. It's kind of at the east end of 5200 South before you get to the railroad tracks. There is an existing single-family home on the north side of the building. It is one of very few buildings that are older than probably me. Exist in the city, but you know, sometimes old has to go and new has to come in. That's not a saying you're going to get rid of me, but anyway, no. Site plan wise, again, this was just a quick version of it. You have my comment, my planning comments of the DRC memo in your staff report. There are a lot of things that need to go on in this. I know when Terry first submitted it, the first thing I told him is the fire department's going to have a problem. They need to be able to get out if they come in. So that will change the site quite a bit, because in order to get a truck turned around, there's quite a bit of land and quite a bit of space that goes with it. So my recommendation would be just tabling both the site plan until they get what the fire department's requirements are, so they can accommodate the fire and see how it lays out. My fear is that if we approve it subject to DRC, that it would change quite a bit. Usually I don't want you guys to approve things if they're large changes, but if they're small little things, then we can get that approved. The architecture, as you see in your staff report, we didn't get any elevations for that. So tabling the architecture would be recommended at this time. Any questions?
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Any discussion from the commissioners?
I know I'm being very vocal tonight, sorry, but I tend to agree with Steve. I mean, it looks like a decent plan, but I still see places where it needs a lot of work.
Okay, I tend to agree with that. Or is there a motion that any of the commissioners would like to make?
Well, I guess you could just do
we could do it in one. Yeah, that's my thought.
I move that we table the site plan and architectural until we can see a adjusted plan.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Felt. All right, that's in order. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we'll table that. I give you a chance to work on it a little bit, and then we'll see you in a future planning meeting.
So as we're talking table, we're talking the fire department and then the elevation on the drawings I have for the size, the height requirement, correct?
Well, the tabling is just, they're not approving it tonight because of the change in the number of units and the change that the fire department will need. When we can't talk. When I finally get all the engineer and fire department comments, I'll send them to you and your engineer, and then have sit down with your engineer and how you can reconfigure everything to get the number of units you want, plus accommodate the fire department. That's the reason why I wanted the table, is just because it will be a big change from what's being presented.
So basically all we did is we hit the pause button on it to give you a chance to bring those things back.
Okay.
Give me a call, Doug, if you have any other questions.
Nope, that'll be fine. Thank you, Steve.
All right, thanks for being here with us. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is Commissioner's Minute. I don't have anything that we haven't talked about already on my agenda here. Does anybody else have anything else that they would like to bring up?
I don't know if this is a commissioner's minute thing, so someone buzz me with an cow prod or something if I'm out.
The buffet's already open.
Ha ha. I don't eat a buffet, so my husband does, so I have to find someone else to take it. So it seems to me that whenever we have these rezones with higher density properties, obviously people get really heated about that, and I understand, obviously. But I'm wondering if maybe we could have like more stakeholders come to those meetings that can address some of these concerns, like, you know, maybe someone from the school board that can talk about the sizes of the school, maybe someone that comes from maybe the neighborhood council, if they have a neighborhood group or something like that. What do you think? Is that something we could have, Steve?
Well, the issue comes is this, the school board is a school board, and they have authority over their items, but not necessarily over yours. Every time I've in a planning department, especially in Davis County did this quite well. Every year they invite everybody to a lunch, and then everybody had to bring what rezones they've done, what subdivisions they've done, what, you know, the future type things that they can tell people, just so they can start planning. At the Weber County level, I haven't had one of those meetings, but again, they have to react to how cities are developed. Yeah. The other issue that comes into play, and I didn't talk about it much, but Senate Bill 82 this year that was passed, it's going to hurt a lot of cities and what they're thinking. What that bill did was, by October 1st, either cities have to amend their ordinances or it's allowed by right, but 75% of all single family zones have to allow internal accessory dwelling units. So an apartment. That's going to make almost every single family home a duplex without rezoning the property. So, you know, the number of renters just went up, which again, this is to help the housing crisis that we're in. Now, we will address it. I've got a meeting on Thursday where I sit down and get in depth with a group of attorneys and planners that were up at the state legislation to kind of tell us, okay, this is what you need to do, this is how you need to do it, and this is what you can do. And then we will start that process. I've already sat down with Andy and Brody a bit to kind of start what we need to do, but we as Roy will accommodate what the state has required of us and go from there. You know, it's hard to say how do you get these other entities here. Mm-hmm. The school board received a letter. Neighbors from 300 feet away from this property received a letter, and I sent out 50 letters and only 10 came. Well, only 10 requested, 5 commented. You know, they may be watching on YouTube, but it's hard to say that they have to come. So you know, we notify them, and if they choose to, they choose to. If they don't, they don't.
Well, I keep hearing this thing about overcrowded schools, and it seems like every school I go by has portables, right? And even at Freedom Elementary, they knew how big those houses were going to be. They had an idea of how many kids might be living in the area, and they still have portables. So that was my thinking when I saw someone from the school board to kind of address that, because yeah. I understand from the perspective of the homeowners out there that, as you say, we don't have any control over that, but someone has control over it. So that someone, school board, superintendent, I don't know, someone should come and say, this is what's going on. This is why we don't have it.
Yeah, it's hard to plan for, you know, the size of the school when you don't know what the size of the capacity you need, especially in this area. How much land did we just see in the aerials that's vacant? Mm-hmm. You know, and if all of a sudden they develop, you know, 12 acres in single family homes at 6,000 square feet, and you're getting 80 new homes or plus, did someone plan for it 20 years ago when they built the school? And, you know, the answer is no. And then you get on the other end where some schools are closing because they no longer have people.
Yeah.
So that's the good and the bad about a school district is it's a crapshoot. If you build one here and a build it this size, will it accommodate 20 years from now?
And just to reiterate what I had talked about earlier, and that when the one time that I talked to Weber County schools, they said, we have no comment. You do you, and we're not going to make a comment about what any kind of density is going in. We're just going to make adjustments however we see fit as enrollment changes, but we're not going to make any comments on any future plan developments or current developments. They wouldn't give me any input whatsoever. Weber County School wouldn't. And some other people that might have been on the commission a little longer would notice that sometimes the school tends to sometimes build buildings without even talking to us about it first.
Isn't that what the general plan is for? To kind of anticipate what those future build outs will potentially look like? Do they use that as a resource?
Didn't seem.
I mean, isn't that why you have it?
Yeah.
Well,
we
it's a
can send
sensor.
it to them. We can send it to them, but how they plan, I don't know.
Yeah, one of the issues they have is just the bonding. You know, they kind of have their own bonding cycle and things like that. And to build a new school is very expensive. So I think they've got their own plan for handling that. I don't really see that as really having a lot of overlap into what we do. You know, I mean, you look at that map that Steve pulled up and all of that area south of 5500, you know, they could throw massive high density apartments like West Haven has in that area. And that makes whatever we do on our little parcel pretty insignificant in a hurry. And there's a lot of land out west to develop, but the schools, they do have a pretty broad plan. You know, I work with them a little bit in the bonding just on the election front. And I think they do have a pretty solid plan. And yes, they use portables and things like that, but I think that's something they address internally more so than wanting to get into the planning side of things. And I mean, it's not that they don't care, they just have a different way of looking at that. And I think the census, you know, that's broken into blocks and things like that. They take that into account. But I just don't feel like what we do really impacts the schools a whole lot. It does add more students and things like that, but they have plans and methods in place to handle that. And that's what I mean by impact.
Fair enough.
Gotcha.
Any other items from any of the commissioners? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is a staff update. Steve.
I'm just letting you know the council is moving forward. We've had a couple work sessions on the ordinance down by the Front Runner Station. I believe they are going to have a town hall meeting. I'm probably stealing some thunder that the mayor wanted to do on Facebook, but town hall meeting on next Tuesday over at the library. I don't know what time yet. I haven't been told that, but to kind of help get some additional comments from those that live around it before they continue on, but they are moving forward with that. The general plan, I spoke to the contractor, anyway, landscape design. I'm hoping to have everything done by our work session with all the public comment that we have received thus far. If things continue as is, then maybe next meeting we'll talk about having our own public open houses for the general plan and where to have those. Schools are always good because it gets them in the middle of communities, but as things start lighting up and the number of people we can have increases in a room, I think we can have a couple before we do anything, voting wise to send it on. So I'm liking where we're sitting on that aspect. So other than that, we're just plugging along.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, with that being said, I think, go ahead.
We have had a lot of interest for downtown. There's at least 4 developers that I know of who have contacted me in one way or another and what they can do. And so there is interest.
I think that's exciting to see people take interest in our city a little bit, because it seems like that's been a long time in the making. None of us will know the plans or how it works out until 20, 30 years from now, but it's exciting for me to see people take interest in it. Was there another comment that somebody was making?
I said our kids and our grandkids will know.
Yes, they will. And they'll be like, dang you, or they'll be like, hey, that was awesome. I'm glad you were a
Exactly.
part of that. So, but at least we've tried, right?
Yes. Indeed.
Awesome. Well, with that, I think we're on to the last item on our agenda. So if somebody would like to make a motion.
I move that we adjourn.
Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Mifflin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, everyone.